A major definition that comes along with rational expressions is what's going to be restrictions. And just like when we think the word restriction, to restrict something means to limit it. Things that aren't allowed. A restricted area means you can't go in. We're going to think of certain numbers that are not allowed in these. When we think of x plus 3 divided by x minus 7, binomial divided by binomial that we have here. Now, when we think of a number that I can plug in for next, I can plug in any number I want. What if I plug in 5? 5 plus 3 is 8. 5 minus 7 is negative 2. 8 divided by negative 2 is negative 4. If I plug in the number 10, 10 plus 3 is 13. 10 minus 7 is 3. 13 divided by 3, yeah, it's a fraction. It's even an improper fraction, but it's still allowed. It's not a bad number. What we're going to have here, when we start talking about domain in later courses, two rules that I like to refer back to in math. These are just kind of rules of thumb, nothing formal. And we're going to expand on these quite a bit later. What I like to say is, just in general, and this is very vague, I like to say no negatives underneath square roots. And we'll spend an entire chapter talking about why this is going to be the case and when it is and when it's not and how we address it and all that business. We don't even know what a square root is, but there are no negatives underneath them. That's something we'll spend a lot of time talking about. Won't even apply here. Our other rule, well, what I like to say is no dividing by 0. And here's why that's the case. Think of a fraction. Think of division. If I have a fraction 8 over 2, 8 over 2 is 4. If I have a fraction 15 over 3, 15 over 3 is, a fraction means division, 5. When I say divide, what I'm really looking for is what times the bottom gives me the top. 4 times 2 is what gives me 8. Well, think of if I had 0 over 5. 0 on the top of a fraction? That's good. What times 5 gives me 0? 0 on the top is 0. In fact, that's where we'll get the intercepts for a lot of these. But what happens is when I have a 0 on the bottom, when I try to divide by 0, the problem is I can't put a number here. 0 times 2 is 0. That's too small. What if I tried 10? 10 times 0. Too small. What if I even tried 0? 0 times 0. Won't work. What happens is nothing is going to end up being, this is what we call undefined. Undefined is one of the times when we have a 0 in the denominator. Well, that's why it's not allowed. Meaning, back here, what gives me 0? If I look in the denominator, x can't be 7, even just by inspection. If I plug in 7, 7 plus 3 is 10 in the numerator. 7 minus 7 is 0 in the denominator, and it's 10 divided by 0. I can't divide by 0. So for that reason, 7 is my restriction. A formal way to find my restrictions, what I want to do is set my denominator equal to 0. But we know the denominator can't be 0, so let it not equal 0. What is my denominator? My denominator is x minus 7. If x minus 7 can't be 0, in this case it's nice because I can just add 7 to each side. That's a formal way of saying and solving for x can't be 7. That's a formal way of finding my restrictions. Let's look at some more examples.